It's that's an interesting question. So I'll start close to home with my great grandfather, my mother's grandfather. He ran the corner store. The corner store, you could go there and you could get a freeze pop, and you could get some candy. You could get little snacks. He had a gas station there. That was one of the neighborhood businesses. There were no other neighborhood businesses out in. Actually, we're getting really myopic now. Out in Cypress Forks, which is where I really live. So Cypress Forks, out in Cypress Forks, there was nowhere to go buy bread. There was no basic services. So my grandfather my great grandfather ran that store, and then my grandfather, my mother's father, he ran. He had a farm. They had a farm. So I grew up. My gosh. Shelling peas, picking watermelon, feeding the hog slop, going to get the eggs from the chicken coop, and my grandfather and we would go out riding, and I would be on the back of his truck selling he had people that had subscriptions back then for fresh vegetables, so he'd go deliver the peas or the collards or whatever, and I would work with him doing that every summer.
So as
a kid growing up,
these concepts that get new ways, like the whole delivery box service and everything.
We were doing that back in the 80s.
You were doing that then, but some of those small town entrepreneurs that have the different understandings, it's a different relationship you have with these people when they are maybe 600 yards that way,
absolutely
700 yards that way, where know that person's gonna want this ear of corn, they'll take that ear of corn. They're gonna want this chicken. They're gonna want.
That's exactly right. And then you'd be like, what, Sister Susie, you can't pay me this time. We'll just put that on your thing whenever you get it. We'll take it. So it was that So we had people had credit, and the credit was just the reputation, because you knew that they were going to be back. And you knew that you wanted to have this person as a customer, and they also knew that they wanted to be able to come back to you for something else in the future. So it was like that. It was like Miss Shirley, who was who was a seamstress, and Miss Shirley had the little boutique, and my mother would go to Miss Shirley's boutique, and she would get clothes, and Miss Shirley would tailor them and customize them to my mom's taste. So we grew up around people that were industrious, and so we figured out how to provide the things that our community needed, no matter what that was. And so it was great being in a society, in a community that had that sense of interdependence.
The further away you move from the relationships with your actual customer base, it's probably not going to be the business that I'm going to have. And that social capital matters so much.
Yeah, the social capital, it really does matter. It's a understanding of who your client base is, understanding of your product and the value that your product provides, and being crystal clear about it. I mean, there's so much value in that, and part of the beauty of when you look at communities of color is that there's not the depth of understanding overall by a greater society, if you will, of how social networks and values as a subculture, how they play out in terms of our everyday lives. And I think there's a lot of opportunity that's still on the table. I will tell you, I had a meeting. I'm not going to say the name of the company, but I was speaking to a major, probably top 10 kind of internet-based technology company, kind of a household name. But I was talking to the senior leadership of that group, and one of the questions I asked, we were talking, and I mentioned Black Twitter, and they did not know who Black Twitter was. And it blew me away that you had this group that was probably, like, if I said name a technology company, it would probably be the first, second, or third name that people would mention. And that they were so unfamiliar with this idea of Black Twitter, which goes to say that there's a lot of value, I think, that's locked up in communities of color that can be tapped by people in communities of color, because we understand how these communities work and the value there. But in many cases, there's not the access to capital, because the cost of entry into certain markets is so high now. So the idea is, okay, you can have this great concept, but the hurdle to get in there might be $2 million, or the hurdle to get into that market might be a piece of policy or legislation. And because people of color historically haven't had those levers under their purview, under their control, it makes it extraordinarily difficult. Which is part of the reason why, for many entrepreneurs of color, the business tends to start at the level of neighborhood base because the capital threshold is a lot lower. But I actually think when you think about a lot of these entrepreneurs, they're a lot more savvy. They understand their market better than anybody else, and given access to capital or a lot of the other things that larger, more established businesses or white businesses, frankly, have, it would be a different game.
Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.